Hi everyone, welcome to the Garcia Blended family. Today I'm going to show you a basic water bath canning recipe. I've been doing this since the beginning of April and I've just fell in love with canning. I showed you my canning room in my closet in the hallway. It's already full, but as my family's enjoyed it and already dug into it, I just find myself looking for more projects. So today we're going to do a water bath canning method. I only use recipes that are approved. I have a ball canning book that gives me recipes. I'm part of a Facebook group. It's really important anytime you do any kind of canning that you follow tested, approved recipes. You don't want to get sick, you don't want to make other people sick. There's rules. Just learning how to follow them, watching some videos, reading some books. The books are excellent. They tell you what to do, what not to do, no matter which one it is, how long to boil it for or pressure can it for. You know, not all pressure canners or pressure cookers can pressure can. So just making sure you follow the rules and you're safe and you can preserve food, make jellies, make salsas, make pickles. It's super fun. The kids have helped me in the past. I'm sure in the next videos that come, the kids will jump right in. This time we're gonna make a chocolate raspberry sauce and we're gonna can it. I found a bunch of raspberries at Costco that I wanted to use for this project just to try to get your feet wet a little bit. It can be really intimidating to start anything new, whether it's instant potting, as a method of cooking, it's canning, it's just anything. It can be overwhelming. So I'm going to show you what I've learned so far and some things that I do just as like an intro video. But again, always follow recipes because acid levels are extremely important, just to preserve your food and make sure that you're safe and what you're making is safe for people to use. So we are going to make this chocolate raspberry sauce. I got it out of the Ball Canning Back to Basics. I have another one too, but you can obviously see I have a ton of recipes that I have marked. So keep my page here. There are some canning things and some prep that you can do ahead of time. I always have like all my ingredients out that I would need. So this does take a little bit of sugar. It takes some cocoa powder, some lemon juice. I have measuring cups, and I'm going to put these in 1/2 pint jars. So I've already washed these in hot soapy water because they were new jars. These were older jars, but these are new jars. And then what I do is, you'll see we'll have to heat these to warm the jars, but not to boil them. And some people put them in their sink, some people put them in an extra pot. I put them right in my canning pot with the tops off, and as I need them, I dump the water off, fill them, and put them back so that they constantly stay warm, because I keep my house at like 70 degrees. So it's important that I keep them in hot water until I want to fill one and then put it away. Any other ingredients that you'll need. So this is going to be our fruit. So the first part is we're just going to mash these raspberries. I also, when I do soups and when I have this like little immersion blender, but for this they are wanting them just crushed. They don't want them necessarily pulverized. Okay, so we're gonna just smash these. They don't want them pulverized, so I'm not gonna use my immersion blender. So sometimes you want not everything to be perfectly smooth. This probably won't be enough, but we will take our measuring cup, and for this recipe, it wants us to use 4.5 cups of crushed raspberries. I like to use my Dutch ovens. I use my Dutch ovens for everything. So in here, when you do water bath canning, I talked about the acid level. So raspberries don't have enough acid, so we're actually gonna add a little bit. We're gonna add 4 tablespoons. And I'm gonna add 6 because I remember I doubled it. But for this recipe, if you're making a single batch, you would add 4. We are gonna mix in the pectin, and which is gonna be like your thickening agent, and we're also gonna mix in some cocoa powder. So normally it would call for a 1/2 cup. I'm doing 1 1/2, so I need 3/4. So this is just sweetened cocoa powder. And then here's our pectin. So this is Ball, I don't know if it's gonna show up. This is Ball Real Fruit Classic Pectin. Now when I make jams and jellies and stuff, I do the low sugar one. So this was for 1, you're gonna do 6. Just until it's evenly combined. Alright, and now just to slowly add this together. So you're just going to mix the 2. Now you'll notice we don't have the sugar. So with this pectin, we will, chocolate mixture, we will mix this. We'll bring this to a rolling boil. Once it's a rolling boil, even with stirring, we will let it go for 1 minute. We'll add our sugar, bring it back to a boil, let it roll for another minute, stirring. You have to stir anytime you do anything with fruit, especially like jams and jellies. You have to be there, and you have to babysit it, because it will completely burn on you, and once it's scorched, it's done. You have to throw it away. There's no way to save it. So I tend to do this when I know I have another person around in case the baby cries, so that can stir for me, or that I know can, you know, take over for a minute so I can go deal with what I need to and then come right back. I think every teenager of mine has been in here and done something. Okay. So far, this is how it's looking. I know, attractive, right? So this is just, again, the chocolate, the raspberries, the pectin, and the cocoa powder. And then we're gonna take this and we're gonna put it on the stove. Okay guys, so we'll put this on the stove. I like to use one of these silicone spoons because it just helps. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna get this up to temperature. Again, we want it to have a rolling boil. Even when it stirs, it'll break down the fruit a little bit, and then we will show you what happens, and we'll add the sugar into it, okay? So we'll be right back as soon as it starts boiling. So, okay, so now this is starting to bubble up. When I don't stir it, you can start seeing that it starts expanding a little bit. So this is gonna start boiling momentarily. And what we want is we just want it to get to a hard boil. And we will add the sugar. There is more sugar in this than I would normally add. Usually I do low sugar or no sugar added to when I make jellies and jams, just enough to give it a little bit of sweetness and bring out the fruit, but not necessarily, oh, there's my yogurt, not necessarily have a lot of extra with just unneeded sugar. So for this one though, it doesn't give me a low sugar option, and I'm still new enough to canning that I'm not gonna do anything that's unsafe. So it'll affect, sugar affects the way it's set. So when I do low sugar, I have a low sugar pectin. So this is a regular sugar, so I have to follow the instructions. So there is more sugar that I would normally use, but we will just let this get a little bit hotter. Like I said, it is starting to expand, and we'll go from there. So I have my little helper here stirring because we have yogurt going and we have canning going. So this is almost there, enough for us to add the sugar in. We're gonna can this right here because you want your jars. My jars are in the pot next to it, and I just put them in here, and I put them in water just to get them hot. I put it on a higher setting just because I want my jars to get very hot. I don't want them to boil. I don't want them that hot, but I just put them in here, you can start seeing things. I just adjust the water. You can start seeing like little bubbles. I'll adjust the water and make it lower, higher, just enough to keep them hot, so I can take one out, fill it, and then put it back. So it kind of sanitizes, steams, does all that at one time, and warms them. So I like make it as easy as possible without breaking cleanliness and sterilization. And some of this we will go ahead and fast forward through until we get to where we're adding the sugar. You can see too that the raspberries, other than the seeds, have completely broken down. So it's getting hotter as my son backs up, doesn't want to get burned. We're just going to add in the sugar, and I like to add it in a little bit at a time, because if not, it just clumps up. You're going to see the colors change when you start putting the sugar in. It gives it like a crystallized look from the sugar, so it changes it completely. I know when I did peach jam, it got like a dull brown, and I was like, oh, well, that's not very pretty. And I put the sugar in, and it turns the brightest yellow. So the sugar just brings out its natural color. So this is a chocolate covered raspberry, so you can already see how this is becoming a more vibrant red from that dull red that it just was. And the sugar's not even dissolved all the way yet. So what we're going to do is we're just going to let it get to a hard boil, and once it reaches a hard boil, we're going to let it go for a whole minute, and then we'll ladle this into our warm jar. So what I like to do is I like to set up a station over to the side so I don't make as many drip messes, and then I just pull out one jar, fill it, put it back until all my jars are full or my stuff's gone. It just makes it super easy to do it right here by everything. So let's get this. You can see the swirly pattern, how the sugar's starting to dissolve already. That's what you want. And because we put pectin, this will be more like a chocolate raspberry jam as opposed to just a liquid sauce. Right now, because the sugar's melted and the pectin is activated and gets thicker when the jar's cool. So we'll speed this up a little bit for you and show you the next step. Okay, so you can see it's starting to boil with the sugar in it. So it'll just won't be long, it'll be just a couple minutes. And this should be ready. It smells good. So the difference between a rolling or a hard boil with this is if you can stir out the boil, it doesn't really count. You need to be able to stir and still have it boiling around. So it's not quite there yet. And just make sure if you use these pots, this whole pot gets hot. So you really have to check your sides too, because your sides will burn as well. I've had that happen before. And you get to this step and you're ready to can it and the whole thing's ruined. I know some people stir continually, but then I just find that it doesn't get hot enough. So it's getting like even a darker cherry at this point. Okay, so, all right, so now it's boiling even when we are not in that same area. So we're not able to clear all the bubbles. Like as soon as we bypass it, it's already boiling again. So we will start our minute now, and we'll just let it keep going. And I do, at this point, I like to stir, not aggressively, but pretty consistent all over, because I don't want at this point to have everything burn. And you can hear these pans get super hot. And be careful, because if one of those bubbles pops, it is very, very hot. I've had a little burn on my hand just from not paying attention. So it's not something like I would necessarily do. My baby's sleeping or in his bed while we do this, or I have another kid that can go and pick him up if need be, just because I don't even want to have to pick him up just during this part. This part's the part that does that. So we're going to turn this off, and it's going to keep going at some point. So we're going to get our jar set up. Over here I just put something to put the jars on, a ladle and my funnel. Now if you're not used to canning, they make sticks that have the different 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, because you have to do different head spaces. For this we're going to do, oop, I didn't turn it off, that's why it's still blowing. For this one we're going to do a 1/4 inch head space. So what that means is from the top of the jar you want to leave a 1/4 inch for expansion, settling, anything like that. Oh, put it a lid, forgot to didn't turn it off, got stuck on that high. So let's just let it turn off for just a minute, because even when you turn the heat off, just remember this is so hot that it can still stick and burn. Okay, so you also get one of these jars handles. You want to make sure that you use these and not touch the water when you're putting it in and out, because you will burn yourself. So what we're going to do is you just take your warm jar, and I'm still stirring this because I got it so hot, and all you're going to do is, these are your heated jars, okay, and you're going to go to 1/4 of headspace, and all we do is we wipe the edges, because you just want to make sure that it sticks. You put your lid on and your band, and this jar is going to get really hot. They want it to just be fingertip tight, okay? And then you take your jar and you put it back in there, okay? And then I pull out another one, being really careful because that's super hot water, okay? And I know this looks really liquidy, but when it cools, it's going to be perfect consistency. You'll see. Okay, we're just going to wipe the edging, because what you're doing is you're sealing this, so you don't want to have something sticky or something on your jar that is going to cause you to not have a good seal. Like, you don't want to go through all this work and then have your jars not seal. So you're also making sure, now jams, it's a lot easier to make sure all the bubbles are out, but you want to make sure that all the bubbles are out of your jars. You don't want to have a bunch of air bubbles in there when you go to process your jars. And you also, when you clean them, one thing I forgot to mention is you want to inspect your rings. Fingertip tight. You want to inspect your rings. You want to make sure they're not damaged. I've gotten brand new jars that the rings have been bent or damaged. So I'm going to go and I'm going to fill the rest of these jars, and I will be back and I will show you what's the next step. Okay, real quick. So what I've done is I have my, it's not quite full yet, but it's everything that I have left as far as how many jars, but I need a pressure can, or I'm sorry, water bath can. I have this much left, so I buy these reusable lids, and I'll just stick this in the fridge. The only water bath canning it so you can put it and make it shelf stable. So this will go in the fridge, and the kids will use it on ice cream or whatever they want. So the most important thing too when you're water bath canning is follow the instructions as far as your cooking times. You have to adjust for altitude. It always says it in the recipe if it's an approved recipe. Ooh, my baby wants food. This recipe in particular for these jars, it wants 1.5 to 2 inches of water over the top. So make sure that you have enough water to cover the jars. You're submerging them in the water just to make sure you get that seal. So we'll put this in. I'll put the top on. I'll put it on high. Now, you do not start, for this recipe, it wants 10 minutes of boiling processing time. Your 10 minutes does not start until it's a hard, rolling, strong boil. If it does not get to that temperature, you do not start your clock. Once you open it and you're like, okay, it's a rolling boil, I put it on and I start my 10 minutes. I've never had jars not seal by doing it this way. It's not gonna hurt you if you over process your jars. It will hurt if you under process your jars. So I will keep the top on, and I will turn it on high so that it gets to temp, and I will check on it and I will visually see a huge rolling boil. I'll put it down and then I'll start my time. Once that happens and you get the rolling boil, we process these jars for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I'll turn the heat off and I'll let it sit for 5 and take my jars out, and I'll show you how that's done in just a minute. Okay guys, so our canning is done. We let it boil and then cool, or boil for 10 minutes and then cool for 5. So water's still super hot, and all we're gonna do is we're gonna take these out and we're gonna let them cool. Now, the big thing that I made a mistake doing is that when you are letting these cool, don't mess with them. Don't push down on the top. See how they're bubbled up? You're gonna start hearing them pop. You want them all to pop naturally, and they pop as they cool. So for a good 24 hours, you're gonna let them cool. Now, generally mine pop within an hour. So the stuff contracts that's inside and it seals. If you press on this and you make it pop, you can get a false sear. Like if you click on this middle and you cause it to be, what are we, concave? Convex? I don't know. To indent in, and you're gonna have like a false seal. And your can may or may not be properly sealed. And what can happen later, which was what happened to me, is that it then popped and I had to use it because it wasn't technically sealed. So it just messes up with the whole process. So just take these out. You can leave them on the counter. I'm just trying to move them. I can touch these some, but you just get them all out. I might fog up my camera. And just leave them alone. Just let them sit. Let them do their thing. You'll hear them pop. And then you're gonna leave them with the rings on, the outer edge band. You're gonna leave these on for 24 hours. After 24 hours, you're gonna take them off. Because what's happening is this is pressing down on this lid. So what happens is this holds it down so that it can do its sealing process. After 24 hours, you take it off. It lets you see multiple different things. If anything's leaking out of the side, over time if something starts leaking out, if your seal pops, this can give you a false sense that it's still secure. So you want to store it with the rings off. The other thing is the rings will start to rust. So I found you take them off in 24 hours. So when you take them off, the rings, wash them, dry them, and you can reuse the rings. The actual seal, this you only use one time. So you'll replace these every time. You can get like a set of 12 for a couple dollars. It's not expensive. It's a little bit more expensive to buy the rings, and then it's a little bit expensive, more expensive to buy the whole setup. So your rings you can reuse, your jars you'll reuse, you'll just redo these seals. So make sure you take care of these, you don't bend them, you don't let them get all rusty, because you can use them multiple times and then be fine. So its only purpose with the ring is to put it on to initially seal the can or the jar, and in 24 hours you want to remove those. So what'll happen is this is blueberry strawberry lemonade concentrate that I made. So I always write the dates on it, what it is, because all of them, I mean, this could look, it's thinner than jam, but this could, you know, be jam, or you don't know what it is until you open it up. So always write the name and always write the date that you canned it. You know, some things like pickles, you want to wait 3 weeks unless you brine them in the fridge. If you brine them in the jar, then you know you need to know what date you did all that pickling, and then how long your jars have lasted. I haven't done it long enough to see how long mine will last, but I know some people get 18 months, 2 years, or longer depending on what it is and if it's canned properly. So just make sure you always write the date and the year, so you know when this was made and exactly how many months old it is. And again, I took the ring off. So when you take the ring off, you don't hear the little button, the button's sucked in. And then another thing is I can lift my jars by just holding the edge of this. It doesn't pop off. I would have to take a pop and pop this off. So I can hold my jars. So every once in a while, every couple of weeks, you want to go through, make sure you don't see anything growing, make sure this is all clean when you're done. If you need to use some warm water, get any kind of jelly or anything you spilled, but make sure nothing's leaking around the edge, make sure your middle is still sealed, make sure it still looks like when you put it there. And happy canning, and thanks guys for joining me. Have a good day. Bye.